My father tried to place me with a tech mogul who destroyed 2 teens. So I built a network and exposed their secrets. Now he's back saying I'm delusional and pleading for me to come home. I still remember the first time I saw the contract. It wasn't in a folder or a sealed envelope like you'd expect something that serious to be. It was just there, on the table, like a menu. My father placed it down beside his coffee and started tapping the edge of it with his finger, like it was something exciting. My name is Caleb. I'm 12 years old. I live in a town called Fairhold, Indiana, a place that's proud of its tech partnerships and brutal about tradition. You understand what this means, right? Dad said. Mom stood behind me, her hands gripping my shoulders so hard I flinched. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat was locked up. My eyes kept scanning the words on the paper, words like exclusive mentorship and binding parental approval. I don't want to go, I said finally. Dad gave a short laugh, but it didn't sound amused. It's not about what you want, son. You're a Durand. This is what we do. Mom bent down and whispered, it's a gift. Don't be ungrateful. Her arm slid down mine and locked at my wrists. I realized that I wasn't allowed to move. Not until the ink was dry. Across the table sat Carter Lockwood, 38, a self-made software tycoon who was known for being brilliant, charismatic, and quietly a monster. Everyone knew about the boys who had been placed with him, how they disappeared after 18 months. Nobody said the word abuse. They said things like couldn't keep up or washed out. But we knew. Carter looked at me like I was a laptop he was deciding whether to replace. We start your onboarding once the blood work comes back clean, he said, not even addressing me, just talking like I was already his. That night, I barely touched dinner. I pushed food around while Mom hummed like everything was fine. I thought about my cousin Race, who had been placed with a hedge fund guy in Seattle. Race used to laugh loud enough to shake a room. Last I saw him, he barely spoke above a whisper. Race had hit puberty early. He'd been 14. I was still small for my age, still looked 10. And so I started eating less. I didn't know the science of it, just a gut feeling that maybe if I stayed small, they'd wait. Nobody noticed at first. I kept my grades perfect. I smiled when I needed to. I got certificates, awards. The adults clapped. Nobody asked why I never went back for seconds. The other boys at school were all trying to grow up faster. I was trying to stay invisible. But you can't stay invisible forever. Not in my family. And I knew, no matter how obedient I acted, how perfect my essays were, none of it would save me. Because here in Fairhold, your last name was your fate. And mine was stamped all over that contract. It started with a detention I didn't deserve. Mr. Gannon, my English teacher, made me stay after school because he said I looked pale, and he didn't want me collapsing during group work. Truth was, I'd barely eaten in 2 days, and I guess it was catching up with me. Sit, he said, pulling out a stool near his desk. You don't leave until I see some color come back to your face. I sat, arms crossed, trying not to make eye contact. The classroom was quiet, just the tick of the wall clock and the hum of his desktop. I figured he'd forget about me in 10 minutes. But instead, he got up and started tidying papers near the window. That's when I saw it. His desk drawer. The bottom one. He had left it cracked open. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I was angry. Or maybe part of me wanted to find something, anything, that proved I wasn't crazy for thinking this whole legacy system was wrong. I reached down and nudged it open. At the bottom was a stack of brochures. Bright red covers. Bold white text. Know your rights. Youth protection under the state of Indiana. I froze. I pulled one out and skimmed it fast, hands shaking. My heart was hammering like I'd broken into a safe. And in a way, I had. According to the law, no minor could be entered into a mentorship or apprenticeship contract without a formal court review, even with parental approval, especially if it involved labor or relocation. I reread that line 3 times. Mr. Gannon's voice made me flinch. Drawers not locked for a reason, he said, still facing the window. I looked up, terrified I was about to get yelled at or worse. But he didn't even turn around. Take what you need, he added. Just don't let it fall into the wrong hands. I slid the brochure into my hoodie pocket, stood up, and walked out without another word. That night, I read it under my blanket with a flashlight, over and over. I memorized hotline numbers. I studied the small section on mandated reporters. And then, something wild started to take shape in my mind. What if I wasn't the only one who was scared? By the end of the week, I had pulled in 6 boys from younger classes. We met in the back corner of the library, behind the reference section. We whispered so low it sounded like wind. We called ourselves the Code Breaker Club. I taught them what I'd learned. What to say if a teacher asked weird questions. What phrases triggered an official report. What not to admit out loud. We were just kids, but we were scared in the same way. And scared kids, when they have the truth, become dangerous. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. It started with my voice cracking in the middle of history class. Mr. Velasquez called on me to read a paragraph, and right as I said, sovereignty, my voice broke like glass. The room snickered. He smiled like it was cute, but all I could hear was the sound of doors closing. Later that week, I found 3 dark hairs on my chin. Just barely there, but enough. Enough for my mother to say, "Oh, look at you," and take a photo like I'd won a trophy. She posted it. Our boy is growing up. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow, holding the edge between my teeth so nobody would hear. Puberty meant the clock had run out. Within days, I started getting texts from my dad's brother about Carter Landrew. About what an honor it was to be picked by someone of his stature. Like Carter was doing me a favor by treating me like raw software he could program. Carter Landrew. Everyone knew his name. He wasn't just rich, he was mythic. A billionaire with a portfolio full of doomed startups and disappeared teens. His last 2 apprentices had suffered total breakdowns. One was rumored to have been institutionalized. The other, no one talked about him anymore. Mom and Dad didn't ask if I was ready. They just told me the meeting was set. "You'll learn more with Carter in 6 months than most boys do in college," Dad said, slicing his steak. "This is how legacies are built." I didn't answer. I just nodded and chewed slowly. It was easier that way. That night, I slipped into the garage and pulled my notebook from its hiding spot behind the water heater. It was the only record of what we'd built, the Code Breaker Club. It had lists, sketches, scripts, even fake identities for boys to use if they needed to call a hotline and stay anonymous. I didn't have time to be careful. I grabbed the most important pages, folded them into a smaller booklet, and taped it under the lining of my cousin Jalen's backpack. He had a therapy appointment the next day with Ms. Rivera, the mandated counselor. He was 10, just old enough to notice something was wrong, just young enough to get taken seriously if you played it right. I told him, "Say the safe word when she asks if anything's bothering you." He nodded. He already knew the word. Infrastructure. Weird enough to be memorable. Innocent enough to not set off alarms unless someone was trained to hear it. The next evening, Child Protective Services knocked on our door. 2 women and a man. Friendly voices. Clipboards. Too many questions. My mother answered the door with her face stretched into a smile so wide it looked painful. "Oh, this must be a misunderstanding," she said sweetly. "Our boys are just advanced." I watched from the hallway, pretending to do homework. My hands were cold. My mouth was dry. But inside me, something burned. I had passed the match to someone else, and he had lit the fuse. Carter Landrew was supposed to take me next week. No? Maybe not. Now the shadows in our house had company. And for the first time, they were asking questions. They found it in the shed. The old notebook, the first one. The one I thought I had hidden deep behind a stack of tarp-wrapped furniture and a broken lawnmower. I'd been careless. Or maybe someone had followed me. Maybe Jalen said too much. It didn't matter anymore. I came home from school to the smell of burning paper. It hit me the second I walked in, sharp and sour, like singed hair and glue. I dropped my bag and ran outside. My father was in the middle of the yard, holding the notebook high like it was evidence in a trial. My mother stood off to the side, arms folded. My uncles were there too. Even my cousin Race, the one who used to be normal before his apprenticeship broke him. The fire pit was already going. "This," Dad shouted, shaking the notebook, "is poison." Nobody moved. No one said a word. "You think we don't know what you're doing?" he said. "Corrupting the younger boys, filling their heads with betrayal and nonsense?" He turned to my mother. He was supposed to be ready. Carter was expecting him in 6 days. 6. Mom didn't speak. She just blinked, slow and steady, like she was watching something die. "I raised you better than this," Dad growled. "You're not some whistleblower. You're a Durand." He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat from the fire on my face. "This legacy has fed you, protected you. Do you think we got here by being soft?" I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That I had tried to stop them? That the notebook was a warning, not a weapon? That I never wanted to be part of this? It wouldn't matter. He dropped the journal into the flames. I heard the crackle as the first page curled inward, ink melting into ash. The fire pulsed, greedy and fast, like it had been waiting for this moment. "The contract signing is tomorrow," Dad said. "You report to Carter the day after. We won't have any more slip-ups." That night, I faked food poisoning. I locked myself in the upstairs bathroom and curled up next to the toilet, moaning loud enough for them to hear. When my mother knocked on the door, I flushed twice and groaned louder. She eventually stopped checking. Around midnight, I crept back to my room and opened the ceiling panel above my closet. I had stashed a small gym bag up there weeks ago, just in case. Inside, a hoodie, cash, a charger, protein bars, a second copy of the hotline pamphlet, and an old prepaid phone with only one number programmed in, Ms. Grayson's. My teacher, the only adult I halfway trusted. I pulled on the hoodie and sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the house. Silence. They thought they had one. They thought the fire had erased everything. But knowledge isn't that easy to kill. And I had a window. Literally. I crept down the hall and slid open the broken side window in the laundry room, loose latch, barely squeaked. My feet hit the grass with a thud. The night air was cold, but I didn't feel it. I sprinted across the yard, cutting through hedges and neighbor driveways, ducking behind trash bins and fences. My feet were bare. I didn't care. I ran like something was chasing me. Because something was. My name. My bloodline. My future. And I wasn't going to let it catch me. I made it to the gas station just before dawn. My feet were bleeding, ripped up from gravel and thorny weeds. But I kept going until I saw the yellow awning and flickering LED open sign. I stood inside for a minute, pretending to browse the candy aisle while I tried not to cry. The guy behind the counter barely looked up. Maybe he thought I was just a runaway with nowhere to be. He wasn't wrong. Outside, the city bus hissed to a stop. I limped to the door, but the driver blocked the steps with his arm. "You got fare, kid?" I reached into my hoodie pocket and realized I had nothing but coins, just enough to buy water, maybe. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought this was it, that I'd come all this way for nothing. Then someone stepped up behind me. An older woman with gray braids and eyes that didn't miss a thing. She touched the driver's arm. "Put him on my pass," she said. He hesitated, then nodded. "Fine." She winked at me. "You get where you're going, sweetheart." I mumbled, "Thank you," and shuffled to the back, collapsing into a seat near the window. I kept my head down, hoodie up, feet tucked under me to stop the bleeding on the vinyl. No one looked at me. No one asked anything. An hour later, I stepped off 2 blocks from the courthouse. I could barely walk, but I forced myself forward, one hand pressed to my ribs, the other gripping the bus railing like a lifeline. I had memorized everything I needed to say. The hotline pamphlet had outlined the whole process. Inside the courthouse, the security guard stared at me like I was a ghost. "You here alone?" I nodded. He looked over my shoulder like someone else must be trailing behind. "I need emergency protection," I said quietly. "I'm a minor. I'm requesting state custody. There's abuse. I know the protocol. I memorized it." His eyes changed at the word minor. He hit a button. A deputy showed up less than a minute later. They led me to a small room with carpet that smelled like glue. Someone brought a form. Someone else brought a peanut butter sandwich I couldn't eat. I said the phrase, "Minorship under coercion. Parentally enforced. No court review." That was the key. That's what the code breaker manual said would trigger a report. But shelters were full. The social worker looked pained. "We're at capacity. We can't place you tonight." I gave her Ms. Grayson's number. 3 hours later, I was sitting on a sofa in her living room with gauze on my feet and hot tea in my hands. "You're safe now," she said. But I wasn't. Because when she called the agency to report what I'd told her, they hesitated. No bruises. No broken bones. No proof beyond my word. That's when I realized truth alone doesn't always win. You have to make them see it. And I wasn't done yet. They showed up the next morning. I was in the kitchen with Miss Grayson, trying to pretend that oatmeal didn't feel like glue in my mouth, when the knock came too loud, too sharp. Not police. Not social workers. Family. Ms. Grayson looked through the peephole and didn't even bother hiding the sigh. "It's them," she said. I froze. My father's voice rang out from the porch. "Caleb, open the door. Let's not make this worse." Beside him, my mother added, "Sweetheart, we're here to take you home. You've been confused. We brought your vitamins." I nearly laughed. Vitamins. Right. They held up a white bottle like it was proof that I had been hallucinating. That all this, the running, the bleeding, the burning journal, was just the product of a troubled boy who needed structure. "I'm calling the police," Ms. Grayson said through the door. "You are not authorized to be here." My father stepped forward. "We have guardianship." "Not anymore," she said. He filed for emergency protection. "This is an active case." They didn't leave. So she opened the door just enough to block it with her body and held up her phone. "I'm filming," she said. "Step back." That's when my mother started crying on cue, like it was a script. "He's been acting erratic for weeks," she said. "Not sleeping. Paranoid. The counselor said he might be delusional." She held out a folder. Inside were staged printouts, Google searches, highlighted quotes from therapy blogs, even a fake email from Carter Landry's office calling me unfit for the program. It was a show, a performance designed to flip the narrative. But Ms. Grayson didn't blink. "You forged this," she said. "None of this lines up with what I've seen." My father tried a new angle. "Caleb's always been imaginative," he said, smiling faintly. "We don't want to punish him. We just want to get him help." Ms. Grayson didn't move. "If you touch that door again, I'm pressing charges." Then she turned to me. "Go get the box," she said. I knew what she meant. I ran upstairs and pulled it from under her bed, an old shoebox with every photo I had managed to collect. Pictures of my arms after training drills. The welt from the belt they used for protocol violations. A burn mark from the soldering iron Carter's people made me practice with for callus building. She took my phone and uploaded the images while dialing 911 with her other hand. "Physical evidence now documented," she said. "Underage subject. Active protective request. Family is on site with forged medical claims. When the officers arrived, my parents were still on the porch, spinning stories. But Ms. Grayson handed over the folder and the photos. She even had security footage from the school last week, me sneaking a second sandwich into my pocket, limping in the hallway, hiding in the counselor's closet. The officer asked me one question. Did they hurt you? I looked him dead in the eye and said, not in ways that leave bruises. That was enough. I was granted emergency protective custody on the spot. My father's face went white. My mother's lip trembled, but she didn't cry this time. Because for once, the lie didn't work. And the story they'd been writing for years? It wasn't theirs anymore. Her name was Dorothy, and she smelled like lavender and Lysol. She picked me up from the courthouse in a powder blue sedan with a dented front bumper and a bumper sticker that said, "Kindness is rebellion." She was in her 60s, retired nurse, soft voice, but sharp eyes. The kind of woman who saw everything and pretended not to. "Seatbelt," she said. "I don't care what you've been through, but we don't drive reckless in my car." I liked her instantly. The safe house was small, just 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a screened-in porch that buzzed with cicadas. But it was warm, clean, and quiet. Dorothy handed me a blanket and a spare phone charger like it was no big deal. "No curfews here," she said, "but we do dishes together. And we talk real." The first few nights, I barely slept. My phone was flooded with unknown numbers and private messages from fake accounts. I stopped opening them, but I knew where they were coming from. My family hadn't given up. Not even close. They started posting things online. Fake stories. Photos from when I was younger, smiling, hugging Dad, holding a science trophy. The captions said I was manipulated by outside forces, that I was in crisis, that I was being used. Some of the posts got traction. My mother had always known how to play the sympathy card. I was called a runaway, a disturbed teen, a liar. They even filed a civil complaint claiming I had damaged the family's reputation and leaked confidential mentorship materials. It was nonsense, but it was loud nonsense. Dorothy told me not to respond. "Let them shout," she said. "You do the work." So I did. I opened my school laptop and started embedding encrypted info into the homework files I shared with younger kids, math study guides, grammar worksheets, even a fake career quiz. I used tricks I'd learned from the Code Breaker Club. Each file led to a hidden folder with hotline numbers, safe phrases, and warning signs for teachers to spot. I called it Freedom Codex. The file spread faster than I expected. Kids started whispering about it in the hallway. One boy, maybe 9 years old, slipped me a note during lunch. "Found your code. Thank you." Ms. Grayson made copies and passed them quietly to counselors in 3 districts. Dorothy printed flyers disguised as tutoring ads. We left them on bulletin boards in grocery stores and coffee shops, places where desperate people notice things. Then something happened I hadn't planned for. My phone buzzed one night with a blocked number. I almost ignored it, but then a text came through. I was Carter's first. "I'm still alive. You're not alone." No name, no location, just that. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Because for the first time, I knew this wasn't just about me. There were others. And they were waking up, too. I wore a gray button-down shirt and black sneakers to court. Dorothy offered to buy me a tie, but I said no. I didn't want to look like them. I wanted to look like me, plain, unpolished, and honest. The courtroom smelled like furniture polish and fear. Long wooden benches. A judge with tired eyes. My parents sat at the other table, dressed like they were at a fundraiser, my mom in pearls, my dad in a navy suit he'd probably borrowed from my uncle. They didn't look at me once. Their lawyer stood up first. He was smooth, practiced. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a tragic case of miscommunication. Our clients love their son dearly. Unfortunately, he has been manipulated by outside influences and persuaded to believe lies about his upbringing. He said I was unstable. Said I had been exploited by radical educators. He said Ms. Grayson encouraged paranoia. He even implied Dorothy was perhaps not qualified to manage such a sensitive situation. And then he brought out a folder. Inside were school reports, carefully selected, good grades, clean medical records, notes from teachers about my behavior. Everything to make it look like I came from a perfect home. The boy had no complaints until very recently, he said. What changed? He looked right at me when he said it. My attorney, some volunteer from legal aid named Marnie, stood up slow. Plenty changed, she said. And we have proof. She handed over the photos. The burns. The belt marks. The screenshots from my family's fake social media campaign. The fake email from Carter's assistant. The security footage from school. It didn't shake them. My mom smiled sadly, like she was the real victim. It's photoshopped, she said under oath. He's always had a creative streak. But then Marnie brought out the big one. An essay I'd written 2 weeks before my escape. It was for English class, an assignment on legacy and identity. I had written the truth between the lines. How legacies weren't passed down, they were forced down. How names could become cages. How silence was taught before speech. The judge read the opening paragraph out loud. My dad shifted in his seat. My mom's eyes went glassy. Still, the judge didn't rule right away. He said the case lacked clear-cut evidence of long-term harm, that much of it was cultural. I could feel it slipping away. Then the door opened. A woman stepped inside. Older than me. Mid-20s, maybe. Worn hoodie. Shaky hands. I need to speak, she said. The judge frowned. Ma'am, you are. She looked at me. He knows who I am. And I did. Carter's first. Her name was Eliza Marin. She pulled out a packet of documents, each page stamped. Signed. Mental health records. Testimonies. A journal. She spoke for 15 minutes. Described Carter's mentorship as psychological erosion. Described the drills, the isolation rooms, the reward-punishment cycles. Described what it felt like to be 15 and told your entire value depended on solving neural algorithms faster than the timer on the wall. She ended with this. If you let them take him, you'll be burying him alive. Just like they buried me. The courtroom went dead quiet. The judge looked down for a long time. Then he tapped his gavel once. Emergency protection extended. Permanent restraining order granted. Parental rights temporarily suspended pending further review. My mom's mouth opened, but no sound came. And just like that, it was over. For now, I was safe. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt awake. I wasn't sent back to Dorothy's. The system said I was too high profile now. Instead, they moved me to a secure foster placement in another county under a new name. Caleb Durand was officially erased from all school records. My file said Caleb R. Dorsey, now middle name recycled, last name neutral. Even my birthday got adjusted by 2 days for tracking safety. But I didn't stop working. The Freedom Codex became more than just a folder of notes. I turned it into a structured, digitized guide, sections for teachers, counselors, kids, and eventually former apprentices. The language was simple. No legal jargon. Just steps, phone numbers, phrases that worked. I added an audio version for younger boys who didn't like reading. We started slipping USBs into library books. Embedding links in math apps. Some older boys figured out how to hide PDFs and code challenges on school tablets. Dorothy connected me with a few quiet allies, a trauma nurse, a school administrator, even a bus driver who had once been placed himself. Each of them had a story. Each of them knew a boy who never came back. My old life kept trying to reach me. I got a court update saying my parents had hired a new lawyer, someone expensive. They wanted to reinstate rights. The petition was filled with words like misunderstood and overreaching institutions. But I knew better. That same week, someone broke into my previous safe house. Dorothy wasn't there. Thank God. But the door was forced open. Files were taken. One of the dogs was poisoned. They didn't find anything critical, but it was a message. We know you're still talking. We know you're still building. The agency moved me again. New location. New phone. New ID card. But the codex stayed alive. I started getting messages. Some from burner accounts. Others through the contact form we buried under 10 layers of decoy web links. One boy wrote, I found your file in a music app. My dad says I'm going to a mentor in August. Can you help? Another. They already signed my papers. I didn't even know I had a choice until yesterday. Please. I had a spreadsheet now. Password protected, double encrypted. Boys in 3 states. 12 confirmed safe exits. 5 still in process. Then I got a message I never expected. No name. Just Carter's second. I'm out. You were right. They were finding each other. I wasn't just planting seeds anymore. I was watching them grow. I didn't know what came next. There were threats, rumors, even whispers that the family networks were hiring people to track down agitators. But I didn't care. Because the codex wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to all of us now. And it was spreading. My family disowned me in the most public way possible. They released a statement through a local journalist, complete with family portraits and quotes from relatives I hadn't seen in years. It said I was deeply disturbed and had chosen to separate from the values that made our lineage proud. My mother's quote ended with, we pray he finds peace and clarity someday, even if it's far from us. They wiped me from everything. Birth certificates, school donation plaques, even the family ancestry site we all used. It was like I'd never existed. But I didn't care anymore. Because while they were busy cutting me out of their tree, the roots of what we built were already pushing through the soil. Anonymous usage reports started trickling in, kids who used the codex to trigger mandated counseling check-ins, to report legacy contracts, to get placed into temporary shelters before the handoffs could happen. Over 50 successful exits across 3 states. All confirmed. Dozens more suspected. Each one was a life pulled back from the edge. I still kept moving. After the break-in at Dorothy's, I never stayed anywhere more than a few months. But my network grew. I didn't need to be in one place to stay connected. I trained new codex leaders online, through secure chat channels and remote meetups disguised as tutoring sessions. We had aliases now, code names, roles. I was Signal. And then, one night, we intercepted something big. A boy from Fairhold, just like me, was scheduled to be flown out private jet, non-commercial terminal, destination unknown. His mentor was a name we'd flagged before. The boy had found one of our fake QR codes in a bathroom stall at school. He messaged the hotline, used the safe word, and activated a protocol we hadn't even tested yet. He was intercepted at the airport with 2 minutes to spare. CPS got involved. The mentor? Vanished. Probably tipped off. But the boy was safe, and the system had a new crack in it. It was the first time I cried since escaping. Not because I was scared, but because it worked. We had made something that worked. Meanwhile, retaliation escalated. Fake articles. Bots posting about orphan boys stealing from families. Even videos pretending to be leaked confessions from Codex leaders. But none of it stuck. Because the truth had legs now. It was walking around in school hallways and whispered in after-school clubs. And someone else was watching. A journalist named Rhea Ingram started digging. She reached out to Dorothy through encrypted email. Said she had testimonies, photos, names, some from parents, others from former mentors who had finally cracked. She wanted to do a feature. Long form. Investigative. National. We debated it. Going public was risky, but hiding wasn't safer anymore. So I gave her the files. Sanitized, redacted, but real. I told her everything. As I wrote the last paragraph of my message, a new ping lit up on my secure channel. Found your code in a school worksheet. They just picked my brother. Can you help me stop them? I typed back. Yes. Send location. Stay where you are. We're coming. The war wasn't over. But this time, we weren't alone. And this time, we were ready.